Let me expand it. So today we are gonna see an extension of functions. Like still we are gonna learn more about functions. Okay. The first thing that you're gonna learn about is called helper functions. Helper functions. Helper functions is just a normal function, but sometimes we call some functions as helper functions if they're returning a piece of work which is useful to some other function, which is useful to some other function. Let's say or else okay, let's take this function. Okay. um okay. Function calculate radius height. I'll show you what I'm doing. Mm, so I'm gonna explain you two concepts here, not one but two: function inside function and helper functions. And also I'm gonna teach you a concept called stack also. Okay. Here you look at the screen, right? Now, first, which function is getting called? Look at the screen, use your knowledge and tell me. Here I have two functions. One is calculate cylinder volume, next is calculate radius height. I'm calling calculate cylinder volume. So which function is getting called first? First, which function is getting called? When I run this code, which function is getting called first? Can anyone put it in chat? Which function gets called first? Silval cylinder. That's exactly right. First, this function will be called. This function will be called because these are just initializations. These are just initializations. They are not getting called. These are just initializations. Now, if it starts from 267, I'm calling calculate cylinder volume 12 and 14. So 12 and 14 goes here. 12 and 14 goes here. Now radius becomes 12, height becomes 14. Okay. Now calculate cylinder volume is calling one more function. Can you look at the screen and tell me which function it is getting called? This function is calling another function, like a for loop inside a for loop. This is a function inside a function. This function is calling another function. Can anyone tell me what function it is calling? Yeah, it is calculated radius and height. Okay, you some said math.py, but I'm talking about user defined functions, like the functions which I defined now. So it is radius and height. This function is calling this function. This function is calling this function. Okay. This function is taking help of, understand what I'm saying? This function is taking help of calculated radius height. Now I'll tell it to you. Now we'll come to calculated radius and height. It says radius and height. So radius also becomes 12. Height also becomes 14. Okay. This 12 and 14 are getting called here. This becomes 12 and this becomes 14. Okay. Now, this is 12. This is 12 and this is 14. Okay. Now this is how it's getting called, and this is how the values are getting stored. Okay. Now answer me one thing. In place of calculated radius height, 12 comma 14, what will be coming? Can anyone guess and tell me? Use your knowledge. I'm calling calculate radius height. What now? This will be substituted with a value. I told you previously also in previous class. When we call a function, that function will be substituted with something. What is that something? Yep, someone have kept the answer in chat. It is 12 into 12 into 14, or else if I don't know the calculation, but it is 812 maybe. That 12 into 12 into 14, or it's 812. I don't know the final result. That result will be stored in this place. That result will be stored in this place. Okay, like 12 into 12 into 14. Okay, this is how it gets written. Now, answer me one thing. Answer me one thing. Answer me one thing. If calculated radius height is not there, if the function is not helping, can calculate cylinder volume result will be coming to us? If calculated radius help is not helping calculated cylinder volume, do we get the final result? No, right? We won't get. So in this situation, we call this calculated radius height as a helper function. As a helper function, we call it as a helper function. Why? Because a function is taking itself. Without this result, it cannot proceed. We cannot proceed further. We need its help. We need that function to run, and we need to get that execution. So that is why we call it a helper function. And also, if anytime you see function, inner function, something like that, this is also the concept of inner function. And also this is the concept of stack. I'll explain all the three concepts again from the start, no worries. But first question was answered. Now you have understood what is the helper function. Second question's answer: can we call it an inner function? Why? Because calculated radius height is inside calculated cylinder volume. Look at the screen and answer me. Can we call it function inside function or no? Can we call this as function inside function or no? Yes, we can call it a function inside a function. Why? Because this function is inside calculated cylinder volume. This is a function inside a function. So we also call it inner function. And one more thing I want to teach you, that is called stack, function stack. This will come tomorrow's class also, but today also I'm going to teach you something. I have written two functions, right? I have written two functions, right? Again, I'm asking the question, like previously I've asked, you have answered, but again answer it. Which function is getting called first? In these two functions, which function is getting called first? Calculate cylinder volume or calculate radius height? Which function is getting called first? First, which function? Calculate cylinder volume, calcium volume. You are all saying that it is volume. That is exactly right, true. It is right. But now again, think and answer me. The function that is getting first called is calculate cylinder volume. Okay, but what is the first function that is getting executed first? Complete execution, which function is getting first? Is calculate cylinder volume complete execution is happening first, or calculate radius height is happening first? Calculate radius height. That is right. Why? Because in your system, in your CPU, the tiny CPU you have in your laptops and computers, it has a stack in it. It has a stack in it. How that stack works, first it is gonna call calculate cylinder volume. It will call calculate cylinder volume. But what is this calculate cylinder volume is calling? It is calling calculate radius height. It is calling calculate radius height. So on the top of this execution, we will be having calculate radius height. We will be having calculate radius height. And always remember, the execution comes from top to bottom. The execution happens from top to bottom. So what you have on the top, calculate radius height. This will be executed first. That written data will be gone to calculate cylinder volume, and at last this will be executed. So that is what we call stack. So three concepts I have explained to you by using this one thing. One is helper function. Second is inner function, like function inside function or inner functions. Third is called call stack. Again, I'm going to repeat all those three from the starting. Pay attention. This time I'm not going to ask questions, but I'm going to complete it. So please pay attention. Again, I'll start from the starting. Let's change it to radius and height. Okay, and the answer won't change. If you want, I'll run it. Oh, sorry, there is a mistake, I think. Oh, I forgot to change this one. Radius, height. Oh, it's good. See, you got the same answer. So again, from the starting, I'm going to explain again. Everyone, pay attention one more time, final time. So this complete code is there, right? This complete code. Here, the execution starts here in line number 267. The execution starts. The complete program execution starts. Because this is just initialization. We are not calling it, this is just initialization. But here we are assigning something. The code starts here. This calculate cylinder volume will be getting called first. Calculate cylinder volume will be called first. Called first. Okay. But this calculate cylinder volume is taking help of another function called calculate radius height. It is taking help of calculate radius height. Taking help, and also it is called inner function because it is a function inside a function. A function inside a function, we call it also an inner function, and it is also taking help because if this return value, if this what we say, if the answer of radius into height was not coming here, it won't get executed. This calculate cylinder volume will not be executed. So it is taking this one's help. It is taking this one's help. Inner function must be radius height logically, right? Yeah, this is inner function. Radius height is only inner function. This is not inner function. This is inner function. Calculate radius height is inner function. It is also an helper function here. It is acting as two things. One is inner function, one is helper function. That's why I have written here. This is inner function and it is also an helper function. So this is helper function also. So now this function is calling this function. This function is calling this function. Now we will move to this function. This function is also taking radius and height, and it returns some answer. It returns some answer. Now you need to understand that this gets executed first. First complete execution. Complete execution. So again, what are the concepts I've explained to you is helper function. What is an helper function? If a function does some small piece of code that returns some logic, that returns some answer or logic, is called a helper function, and this satisfies that condition. It is also called a helper function. Now it is also an inner function. Why? Because this function is inside another function, so we also call it an inner function. Third thing, call stack. What is this call stack? Even though first called function is calculate cylinder volume, the first complete execution is calculate radius height. The first execution is calculate radius height. Why? Because this is getting called first, but this is calling this. So this will be executed first. This complete function will be executed first, and then later on this function will be executed. These are the three concepts of helper, inner, and some theory now. What are the benefits of using a function? Reusability. This is the same concept I told you yesterday. Previous class. We can use the same code again and again and again and again. How many times you want, you can use the code. If you want to use thousand times, you can use thousands of times. But that is called reusability. What is modularity? Here, if you see the same work, I can divide it into smaller tasks. Smaller tasks. Have you ever heard the word sentence called divide and conquer? Divide and conquer. This is a technique in programming also. What happens is, if there is a bigger problem, even this is applicable to our own life. If there is a bigger problem in front of you, you can divide it into smaller tasks, like very smaller tasks. You can complete all the smaller tasks, and you can later on combine it to become a bigger solution. So that is the concept of modularity. You can divide everything into smaller modules, and later on you can bring it together. That is modularity. What is encapsulation? Encapsulation is nothing but, for example, if you take this function, this function is written by someone else. Let's say this function is written by someone else, or another developer. But by looking at this name of the function, you can understand it is a toggle button. It is a toggle button in the sense on off button. You can understand it. Do you now need to go and check the code of it, or else you can normally use it? You answer it to me. Yeah, like type down approach, Ravindra. So if there is a function, you have understood what the function does by just seeing the name of it. Do you still need to go to the function and see what is happening? In if you are an experienced developer, there is no need of it. That is called encapsulation. Encapsulation is nothing but encapsulating some logic in it. You no need to know the logic inside it. You just call the function name and that will be executed. If for example it's like ordering some food, you no need to understand how that food is prepared. You call the food comes to you in a restaurant. You no need to go to kitchen and see how it is prepared and all. You just ask it, they'll give it to you. That's it. That is called encapsulation. Just encapsulating all the data logic inside it. Next to the scope. Scope is nothing but where it works outside the function or inside the function. These concepts are scope. A scope, let the cons, I've already explained it to you. That is nothing but your scope. Scope is also, you can make use of it in functions. Yeah, that's it. All the theoretical part. Yeah, now coming to function expressions. Function expressions are nothing but if you see this function, or else let's give it a name. Let's give some any name. Let radius height equal to function. You can do this. And instead of calling like this, you can call radius height. Even though you will get the same output, no difference. You'll get the same output. Now, here I want to teach you a few things. This is called a radius height is called a variable here, a normal variable. Also, it is called an identifier. It is also called an identifier. Just remember it. It is enough. We call it a variable and an identifier in this scenario because it is taking a function. We call it a variable and an identifier both. And this function is called function keyword. You already know it. It's a normal function keyword. And these are called parameters. You already know it. These are called parameters. And these are called arguments. This is called return. That's it. Identifier, function keyword, actual function, parameters, arguments, and return keyword. That's it. That is your function expressions. Nothing more to explain in it. Your favorite arrow function. Everyone were asking me about this. Even in LinkedIn, I received some messages regarding arrow function. So what is an arrow function? Arrow function is just nothing but changing the syntax of a normal function. If you are able to change the syntax of a normal function, let's take this function. Function calculated radius height. Okay. This is a normal function. But when the JavaScript got updated, it got updated like that. We got something called arrow functions. What these arrow functions do? Arrow functions just removes this stuff. I can just remove it and I can simply say like this. That's it. That is an arrow function. If you run the code, same output, no difference. Now did you all get what is an arrow function? This is an arrow function. If you write like this, it is a normal function. If you write like this, it is an arrow function. That's it. Just remove this function calculated radius height and here add a arrow symbol like this. That's it. Over. Arrow function is completed. Now, but arrow function always needs a variable. If it is not given, we call it an anonymous function. But every time arrow functions needs a variable or an identifier. Now, let I'll give you small tasks for you now. Volume equal to, convert this into an arrow function and put it in chat. Now I've put a small line in your chat. Convert that into an arrow function. There is no difference. There is no difference, Pavan. In the execution wise, complexity wise, there is no difference. Everything still remains the same. Arrow function is just a fancy way of writing the code. It's just a fancy way, like showing yourself a bit fancy like that. But there's no much difference. There are some, but I'll tell it later. For now, there are no much differences within your conceptual explanation type. But for you, I can okay. I have a small notes. I'll give it to you. These are some whatever you keeping here is exactly right. That you changed it to arrow functions. That is right. And if you want to know the advantages of using an arrow function, I have put it in the chat. This keyword behaves differently in an arrow function, and also the argument behavior usually be different. It is better for error handling, and also you cannot use that new keyword, new function. That one you cannot use, and implicit return type can be skipped sometimes. So that is the advantages. But more on this in the coming classes. Anyways, I'll tell it to you. So yeah, you have understood arrow functions. I'm happy for that. Now we'll see some of the different types of functions that we have. Different types of functions that we have. Now let me explain this one. 0 parameter, 1 parameter, and a 2 parameter. In an arrow function, you all say that this is an arrow function, right? Now let's say, now I'll ask you some yes or no questions. Do you agree this is an arrow function or not? Say yes or no in the chat. Do you agree that is an arrow function or not? Yes, you are all agreeing that it is an arrow function. Now, how many parameters this function is taking? How many parameters? I'm not asking anything. I'm asking parameters. 2. So we call it 2 parameter arrow function. We call it 2 parameter arrow function. We call it 2 parameter arrow function. What if I removed one? I kept only radius. Okay, let's take this height is not there for now, just for explanation purposes. Now, if there are 2 parameters, we call it a 2 parameter arrow function. If there is 1 parameter, then what we call it? If 2 parameters, this is 2 parameter arrow function. If it is 1 parameter, 1 parameter, it is 1 parameter arrow function. If it is 2 parameter arrow function, it is a 2 parameter arrow function. If it is a 1 parameter arrow function, it is a 1 parameter arrow function. That's it. And 1 parameter arrow function, you don't need to use these brackets also. Directly you can write like this. It is an advantage. You don't need to keep the brackets if it is only 1 parameter. If it is only 1 parameter. Now, if I don't use any parameter, let's say I don't use any parameter, I'm just returning hi. Let's say. Now this is 0 parameter. We call it 0 parameter arrow function. That's it. This is the concept of 0 parameter, 1 parameter, 2 or more parameter. That's it. Now, here curly braces are not necessary in a arrow function. If, for example, if you take this example, how many lines are there in an arrow function? Like inside the execution block, how many lines are there? One. Only one line. So simply, you can remove this curly braces. You can write console.log. You can write it like this. There is no need of using curly braces. So this is how a single line arrow function looks like. No need of curly braces. And yeah, this thing automatically gets returned. This thing automatically gets returned. You can write it like this also. If you write it in a single line, right, you no need to write return and all. You no need to write return. Remember, in a single line you can just simply write hi, and that will be automatically returned. That will be automatically returned. No need to return hi. No need to write that. No need to write return and all. If you want, I'll just show it to you. Console.log radius height. See, it is getting executed. Hi. So no need to return anything. Automatically this line will be returned. That is this thing. Last but not the least, anonymous function. An anonymous function. Uh, okay. Anonymous function is simply, for example, let's take this. Let the cylinder volume equal to function calculate cylinder volume. If I remove this part, we call it an anonymous function. That's it. Why? Because if you see this line number 255, 256, 257 till 259, this function, I have the variable name, but did I give any function name here? Look at the screen and answer me. Did I give any function name? This is variable name. This is not function name. This is this. Did I give any function name? No, right? So this is called an anonymous function. A function without having any name is called an anonymous function, and anonymous function should always be linked with some variable, some identifier. It has to be always linked with some identifier or with some variable. Otherwise, you cannot call it. So every time an anonymous function, you can just call it by using cylinder volume. By using this identifier, you can call it this functionality. Remember, identifier variable is different, function name is different. Here you can call it using this cylinder volume, this identifier. That's it. Anonymous function doesn't have a function name. Always it is called using its identifier. That is your anonymous functions. Call stack, just now I explained you. I thought it comes in the coming classes, but it came in today's class. Call stack, just now I explained you. Last in, first out. If two functions are there, the inside function will be executed first. Next comes the concept of hoisting. Let me comment all this. Now I'll show you something. Console.log of a at a equal to 2. This is what I want. Can anyone tell me why this code not worked? Why this code has not worked? Can anyone tell me? This is the concept of hoisting. I'll tell you what is this hoisting and all. Can now anyone tell me this code is not working? Why? Why it is not working? Can anyone tell me why? It says cannot access A before initialization. Why? What is the problem here in this 2 lines of code? That's exactly right. Line by line execution order is working. Order is wrong. So what happened is, I told you JavaScript is a line by line compiler. Like it goes line by line. It's an interpreter. It goes line. It reads first line, reads second line, reads third line, reads four, like that. Now when it started reading 271 console.log of A, it doesn't know what is A. I told what is it where in line number 273, next line. But here in 271, it doesn't know what A is. So we get an error. We got a reference error. Now, if I change it like something like this, let's say I removed A equal to 2, I have kept here. And initialization part I have kept at the down. Let's say I've kept let equal to A at the down, after console.log of A. Now if I run the code, 1 second. Okay. Now I have given A equal to 2. I have given a equal to 2. I am saying console.log of a, let a, but still I'm getting reference error. Can anyone tell me why? Why? Uh, so yeah, where I'm saying, yeah, I have also given a equal to 2, but still it is not working. Can anyone tell me why? Not as a memory again. Again, the same thing. What happens is like, even though I said a equal to 2, I have not initialized it. I have not initialized inside the memory. I have not initialized inside the memory. To actually work it, we have to write let a equal to 2. Then it works properly. Now properly that value is getting initialized in the memory, and also you can use it. This is a concept called hoisting. This is a concept called hoisting, because even though you have given the variable name, you have not initialized it. You have not initialized it. But I'll give you some more. So where we stop? Now let's take a function. Let's take a function in this case. Let us take cylinder volume. I'm just thinking how to explain it to you much more better. Hoisting cylinder volume, I'll try to keep it here. Ah, even for this also the same problem. Just I wanted to show it to you. Even for this functions calls also, it's the same problem. You cannot do a hoist call, like you cannot call it first, and you cannot write it first. It always have to be down. This is function hoisting. More I'm left off with. Okay, okay. There's one more thing can tell you. One is direct function call. Function cylinder volume. Oh, radius site is not defined. Let's now just to say 8 for now. I'll do console.log also for you. Now, you will understand what is hoisting. Now you will understand what is hoisting. This is what I'm waiting for. Sorry, console. Till now, from the concept that I taught you, I nowhere like before, if I kept a variable name, it didn't work. Uh, Anonymous function I've shown it to you, it didn't work. But in this case, it is working. Can anyone tell me why? Can anyone tell me why? Now I'll explain you hoisting better. Trust me, with this I'll explain you hoisting better. Can anyone tell me why this is working now? Why this is working now? I am calling the function before even writing the function. Before even the function getting executed inside the memory, I'm calling cylinder volume and I'm getting the output. There is no reference error here. Can anyone tell me? Because we reuse functions, that's a part of it, but that is a part of it, but still. Anything more that you can think of? Function execute after call, since you are directly running function running to near. Actually near, that's somewhat the answer. Whatever the answers you're keeping is actually true in a sense, but the right thing is it's the concept of hoisting. Only it happens for this kind of direct functions. Remember, this is the concept of hoisting. Hoisting is nothing but you're calling console.log cylinder volume, right? Now JavaScript, the concept of hoisting, what it does is, and it is applicable only to functions. It variables does not do hoisting. Anonymous function does not do hoisting, but functions do hoisting. Functions, your normal functions, they do hoisting. What happens is, in your memory or in your CPU, whenever it sees cylinder volume, it gets stored in a stack. It's not getting called. understand what I'm saying. It is stored in a stack. It's not getting called directly. It will be stored in a stack first. Then this hosting concept I've explained you, right? It will look for cylinder volume. It will search for cylinder volume. It will search for cylinder volume. Now cylinder volume is found, right? In the stack and in the CPU, it cuts this function from here. It pastes it on the top. That is what hosting will do. That is what hosting will do. Indirectly, when you're even though when you're writing in this way, the concept of hosting will bring this down function to the top. It will bring this function to the top. It will make like this. So that is the reason, even though when I'm calling a function normally, if I write console.log way before, it is getting called, it is getting executed. This is the concept of hosting. You can also see here the keywords where and let do not allow hosting. For variables does not allow hosting. That is the reason whenever I'm writing let a equal to 2 console.log a, or I'm writing a equal to 2 let a down, it is not working. But for if you take the concept of function hosting, functions are elevated to the top of the scope in which they are defined. If I'm calling on the top on the second line, functions will be moved to the top of that variable. That is the concept of hosting, function hosting. We call it function hosting. Whew, that's it. And Python, C++, Java does not involve hosting at all. No hosting, completely no hosting.